Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jess and this is another reading wrap up. So if you haven't been here before, here on my channel, I like to do wrap-ups every couple of books instead of doing one every month or so, because every month is different, fluctuates how much I read, if I read a lot, if I read a little. And so I tend to do them every 5 books, and I've hit the 5 book mark, which means we get a wrap up. So there are quite a bit of differences in the books we talk about today. There are ranging from fantasy to nonfiction. So it's gonna be a fun time. It's gonna be a trip, but I enjoyed all of these books and I am excited to share them with you. So without further ado, let's get into the first one. So the first book we're going to talk about today is going to be The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. So I originally started reading Marie Lu in like middle school when she came out with her Legend series, and I loved it. I loved her. So when this one came out a couple years back, I knew that I needed to pick it up. But it is very different than what she's written in the other books that I have read from her. So in this book, we follow Nannerl, and she is the sister of Mozart. So she's the older sister of Wolfgang Mozart, and she loves to play piano. And at the beginning of this book, she is a young girl who is also on her way to becoming a prodigy, just like her little brother. However, she is in a time where women don't get the same opportunities, and so she knows that as soon as she turns 15 and she's of age to become a woman, she's going to be married off to the best suitor to build her family's wealth and placement within society instead of being able to follow her dream. And she wants to do everything to try to not have this happen and be able to live her own dream. And so she decides to try to look for alternative solutions in the way of magic. So she composes in secret, and these composings start leading to weird things happening. Flowers start sprouting out of the music. She starts seeing this other world called the Kingdom of Back, and it is straight out of a storybook that she used to tell to her little brother when he couldn't sleep. And she meets this boy from the Kingdom of Back, and she thinks that he is the lost prince and that he needs help saving the Kingdom of Back. And so she goes into this deal with him where she takes her brother and they sneak off in the middle of the night every night to go into the Kingdom of Back with this boy and help him try to retake his castle and save the whole kingdom. But it turns out not everything might be what she thinks it is, and she might not be doing exactly a thing that is good, if that makes sense. But yeah, love this book. This book, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really imaginative. I liked the idea behind it. I liked the idea of it. I liked the execution. I liked the characters. I liked the story. I liked the plot twist and everything that it took you on. I think it was great. The writing in here is very, very lyrical. It feels like you're getting told a bedtime story, and it's so good. I read this in one day. It's not that short of a book. It's like just over 300 pages, but I sat down and I couldn't put it down. I flew through it and it was beautiful. So the only reason that it did not get 5 stars from me is going to be that while I love the characters, I wish that some of them would have been explored a little bit more. I like, for instance, their mom is in this at the beginning like a lot, and she has like a lot to say. She's kind of like going against like her mean father's wishes or whatever, and she's trying to like relate to Nannerl, but then she kind of just falls off and we don't see that anymore. And I would have loved to see more of like that mother-daughter relationship throughout this book and kind of see her aspect in it. But other than that, like just some small nitpicky things, this book was wonderful. If you are a fan of Marie Lu, I would recommend checking this one out just because it is a completely different side of her than I've seen before. So all of her other books, are not lyrical at all. They're fighting and civilization, like different civilizations, and running around and high stakes and going crazy. And this, while it is high stakes, it has a lot less of the action. And it's like I said, it's lyrical. It's like reading a bedtime story. And I thought it was beautiful and I loved it and I highly recommend it. Okay, so book number 2 is a complete flip from what we just talked about. And it is going to be My Survival, A Girl on Schindler's List by Rena Fender with Joshua M. Green. So this is a memoir. It is super, super short. It is only barely over 100 pages. Yeah, it's literally 112 pages, and most of those are pictures, but it has like super big writing too. So super quick, like hour and a half long read, if even that. And it killed me. I cried. So this is the story of a girl going through the Holocaust. I say a story, it's her memoir. So it's literally her going through the Holocaust. She's a young girl living in Poland. And at the time when the Nazis come in, she's about 9, and they force her whole family into the ghetto, which is the section of the city that they walled off and shoved all the Jews into. And you follow her as like her father gets taken away and her mother have to start working in these like Nazi shops. And then as they get starting to get people start disappearing from the ghetto and getting taken away to concentration camps. And then her story starts to look a little bit better when her mother and her get hired to go work at the factory ran by Oscar Schindler and his wife. And so they go to work in this family and with this family, and it saves them from the concentration camp, like it did so many Jews in that time. And it is just, it's heart wrenching, it's beautiful. It really shines a light on another aspect of the Holocaust. A lot of these books like this are survivors that went to the concentration camps. I've only read, this is only my second book I've read that actually deals with someone that was on Schindler's List and got saved by Oscar Schindler. So this was a really cool thing to read. Like I said, it was super quick. It was super good. It was super, super heart wrenching. It really made you think about things. And yeah, I liked it. I don't tend to rate nonfiction in terms of stars, so I don't have a star rating for this one. I always just say whether they're good or bad. I hate rating nonfiction because I feel like it's pretty hard to rate stuff that's normally like facts or like this one where it's a true story. So yeah, I do really like this one. So if you are like if you're interested in studying the Holocaust or you just enjoy reading people's stories about history and important times in history, this would be a good one to pick up. The third book for this video, I am so excited to talk about because I was not expecting to love it the way that I did, but I loved it. It was absolutely amazing. And that is going to be The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. Okay, this was so good. It is a thriller, and I am not normally a person that enjoys reading thrillers. I don't really like being scared, but I was not scared in this one. I was just like invigorated and on the edge of my seat the entire time. So in this book, we follow Lo, and Lo is a travel blogger that works for this magazine, and she is stationed in London, and she is having some issues with her relationship with her boyfriend and just feeling like she's not in a place where she's comfortable. And her boyfriend leaves to go do his own assignment somewhere else, and while she's at home, her house gets broken into and she comes face to face with the robber, and she feels like she could have been hurt, but he doesn't hurt her. He just kind of slams the door in her face and goes about his business, locking her in her bedroom and then leaves. But she's so shooken up from this experience that she has PTSD. Like, she's super jumpy. She doesn't like not being around people, like being on her own. She won't go back to her apartment, whole 9 yards. As you can imagine, that situation, it was pretty rough. It was pretty traumatizing. So that's where we open. And then she gets this assignment to go be the person representing the magazine for the opening of this like cruise ship, but the cruise ship is only the size of like a small yacht. It's only got like 10 cabins on it, and it's only for like super 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 wealthy people, like billionaires. So it's the first launch, which is going to have like her, some people from some other travel magazines, like three other people, the guy that owns the ship and his wife who has cancer, and then a couple more billionaires, like society's best and brightest people are the only people on this ship at this time. So they launch out. She's still dealing with her anxiety and stuff, and she's trying to calm it down, but she's very nervous. She's very upset. Um, and the first night while she's on the ship, she hears the girl in the cabin next to her scream, and she runs out to her balcony because she hears a splash in the water. And when she gets out there, she looks over, and on like the cabin wall beside her, she can see a smear of blood, and then she can see something black and white just floating down into the depths of the ocean. So she believes that the woman in the cabin next to her has been murdered. So she calls the head of the security, she calls everybody she can think of, and he walks her into the cabin just to check. And the cabin next to her is completely empty. Nothing was there that she saw when she saw the girl that was in there the day before, and it looks like nothing ever happened. The blood's gone, the person's gone, all the stuff is gone, and the girl never existed. And so Lo is trying to figure out if she imagined it all and she's making this up in her brain because of her PTSD, or if someone is really in trouble and possibly dead. So yeah, I would describe this book as Clue on the sea. But you don't know who died. You don't know who they were. You don't know how they died. You don't know who did it. You don't even know if they were even there in the first place, or this entire book is just a wild goose chase. Oh my gosh. It was insane. Okay, it takes you so many different places. There's so many different leads. There's so many different turns. As people, you don't know if you can trust them, and then for a little bit you do trust them, and then they just throw it back in your face and you don't trust them anymore. It is insane. And then like I said, also I loved it because I think it felt way more like a mystery than it did a straight thriller, because for the majority of this book, like 90% of it, it's just her trying to figure out the mystery and piece together, like, did anything actually happen? And if something did happen, what was it? And it's less about like thriller, jump scares, I'm gonna die, I could like someone get hurt, that kind of thing. I mean, that's there, but it's not the forefront of the story until like the end when it's like things ramp up a little bit, but it's never like scary thriller, which I think is why I enjoyed it so much. But I was not expecting to. When I went into this book, I did not know what it was. I didn't know a thing about it. All I knew was it was on my shelf and I needed to read it so that I could pass it on. But I will not be passing this on because this was beautiful, beautifully written, beautiful setting, beautiful story. I felt like I was in it the entire time, and it was so like, it gave me so much anxiety because I had no idea if what we believed was actually true or not. Okay, it was insane. But yeah, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It flipping beautiful, guys. Read this book. It will take you on the roller coaster of your life. So the fourth book we're going to talk about today, I didn't actually read. I listened to it on audiobook, and that is going to be Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. This book, I didn't really enjoy it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because it was interesting. I liked the concept. I thought that it was really cool, that it was going to be great, and then it just didn't deliver. I was confused most of the time. In this book, we follow Amy. Amy is this small town girl from Kansas who lives with her alcoholic mother and is having a pretty rough life when a tornado blazes through their trailer park and she gets picked up and taken to Oz. Now, she knows Oz as the place in the storybook and the movie from when she was a little girl that Dorothy went to, but she never would have imagined that it was real. And she gets there, and the Oz of now is a little different than the Oz that was described to us back then in that story. So in Oz, the original story happened, and then Dorothy went back home, and Dorothy didn't like back home in Kansas because she went back to being the nobody farm girl that she was, and she wanted to go back to Oz where she was a hero. So Dorothy goes back to Oz. She becomes the Queen of Oz, and she gets a mad power trip and decides to steal all of the magic and enslave the Munchkins and just go crazy. So Dorothy's basically killing Oz. And Amy, being sent here by this tornado, gets recruited by the Revolutionary Order of the Wicked, which are the one group of people that are trying to fight back against Dorothy and remove her from Oz's throne. And so she gets thrown into the politics and to the scheming in the palace of Oz undercover, and her job is to kill Dorothy. This book is a trip, okay? Half the time I was so confused, I had no idea what was going on. And the other half of the time I was just really annoyed at the decisions that our characters were making and annoyed at what our main character was thinking, okay? So we spend the whole time in Amy's head, and Amy is an infuriating character to read from. Like, she just she's constantly not thinking about what's going on around her. Like, she I don't know how to describe this other than like she can't see the big picture, okay? Like, they were telling her the plan, they were putting her in the situation, she was doing her thing, and then she would just make some random mistake that was very obvious that it shouldn't be made. Like, she'd be faced with these two choices, and one of them would be like what she's supposed to do because that's what they kind of told her to do, and then one is like, oh, well, they didn't really tell me to do that, and then it's like obvious that it would lead to something bad happening that would just like destroy the whole plan and everything she's worked for, and she goes to that every single time. And it was just infuriating. Okay, I know it was supposed to like slow down the story, add some like character into it, make her seem like a little bit more relatable, I guess, and not like the main hero come to save the world, just chosen one type. But it just drove me nuts, honestly. But yeah, I gave this one a 2 out of 5 stars because I just didn't like it. I'm also not that big of a fan of The Wizard of Oz in the first place, so I didn't really feel any like nostalgia coming to like being back in the setting of Oz with like the original characters also there. The original characters are in this one, by the way, like Dorothy, the lion, the wizard, the scarecrow, um, the Tin Man. But the Tin Man, the lion, and the scarecrow are like all soldiers of Dorothy now, and they're also like bad guys. It's a mind trip, okay? It's very hard to wrap your head around what's going on in this world and what's exactly happening, what we're supposed to be doing, like where everything's heading. It's insane. But yeah, 2 out of 5 stars. If this sounds like your thing, I applaud you, but this one was just it just wasn't for me, sadly. And the final book that I'm going to talk about for this video today is going to be my favorite one out of all 5 of these. I loved it so much, and I'm so excited to get to share it with you guys. And that is going to be The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. So this one, it's a realistic fiction story, and it starts off in Texas in 1921, and we are following a girl named Eleanor, and she had a fever when she was a child, and so the doctor told her family that she had a weak heart and she would never be able to like experience the same kinds of things that everybody else did, or she could possibly die. And her parents took this to heart. So while she is the rich daughter of a rich family that should be out meeting boys and joining society, she is kept in the dark in her room, like kind of shunned by her family, honestly. They tell her she's not pretty, all these other things, and she's just not accepted the way that everybody else is. So eventually she gets tired of it, and she decides she's just going to go find her own acceptance, and she meets a boy named Rafe. Well, one thing leads to another, and Eleanor ends up pregnant. And when her parents find out, they are furious. And so they pack her up in a truck and they drive her out to Rafe's parents' little bitty farm at the edge of town and drop her off and say they never want to see her again. So Eleanor, being thrust into this new life of having to like actually work and keep up with things and becoming a new mother, finds her place. She finds that she really enjoys being on a farm. She feels like Rafe's parents are more of parents to her than her parents ever were. She feels more love there than she ever did. The only thing that's wrong with it is her relationship with Rafe. Well, this gets even worse whenever we hit the year 1934, and they are smack in the middle of the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl happened in the 1930s when the Great Depression hit. Um, Basically, all of the crops and everything died, from like Texas to Oklahoma and then a couple other states. And there was dust and dirt, constant storms constantly blowing through and coating everything. Crops couldn't grow. People were out of work. People were poor. People were dying. And it was insane. And they are trying to stay on this farm and save their farm. And Rafe can't take it anymore, and he leaves. He leaves her, his parents, and their two kids just on the farm all alone, and heads off to California. So Eleanor decides that she's going to stay, and they stick it out as long as they can until her youngest son gets sick and they can't take it anymore. And her only option is to pack the two kids up in the truck by herself with a little bit of money and try to make it all the way to California. And so they make it there, they try to find work, and the story just unfolds from there. It goes in a million different directions, but I loved it. Okay, I listened to this on audiobook, which I highly recommend. The woman, I don't know her name, that narrates this book was exceptional. Okay, she made you feel so much this entire time. It's also to do with the writing was beautiful. Okay, I felt like I was in this story. I could feel the heartbreak. I could feel the stakes changing at every turn, because every time something got fixed and we solved a problem and we thought things were good, something else went wrong. And it was just gut wrenching the entire time. And I loved it. And then at the end, if you haven't read this, I'm not going to say exactly what happens, but if you have read this and you know what I'm talking about, the ending to this book infuriated me to no end, okay? Because why did they have to do that? I don't know why she had to do that. It wrecked my entire soul. I cried for like a full like, couple hours about it. I had a whole breakdown. It was crazy. But yeah, I love this book. This is like the first book in a while that has made me like actually cry, and I am going to give it props for that, because books can't normally I don't normally cry at books. I just don't, but this one I felt like I was there. I felt like these people were like my family, my friends, and that's the way it should be. And it was absolutely amazing. So this definitely gets a 5 out of 5 stars. If you are a fan of any type of historical fiction, um, lyrical writing, or just someone that loves books and wants a good story that's going to make you emotional, read this book. Okay, read this book. Don't read it without some like tissues, but read this book. Okay, so that is all of the books that I have to talk about today with you guys. If you have read any of these books, please let me know, as I would love to chat about them with you. And then also let me know down below some books that you guys have been reading recently, as I would love to know. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye!